Most people think that fitness is not sustainable. They think it's going to be too much. They think it will take up too much time. It's going to be too overwhelming given their career, their family life, and all the other things that they've got in their life, the moving parts. But that's not the problem. The problem is that they've never been shown how to do this in a way that makes it so easy they can't imagine not doing it. Hello and welcome to another episode of Beast of Burden. My name is Paul. I run Hounds of Health here in Wandsworth, London, and I help busy professionals get fit, take charge of their health, and make it easy for them to make these massive changes that they never thought were possible. So if you've been on this journey with us for a while, we've been running this podcast for over, probably 10 months now, and we've covered so many different subjects. And what I hope to have done is build a library and a resource for any of you who stumble upon this podcast, whether it's the audio version or this YouTube version, and you'll have an opportunity to find some subjects, find the subject matter that really is affecting you, and I can call upon my experience and my team's experience on how we solve problems for real people in our studio where I'm filming this and recording this podcast. And we help people on a daily basis solve really challenging problems. Well, they're not really that challenging, but actually, because they failed so many times over and over again, they could feel like they're insurmountable. And we want to make it easy to solve. And we know, having done this so many times, what solutions look like for all the kinds of scenarios that we encounter from, we work with men, women, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and even 70s. Sometimes they're at the beginning of their career, sometimes they're not only hit a real peak in their career, but they've also got a family. And last week's podcast was about how do you stay fit with a family. So we're trying to work on those subjects that really affect the people that we work with. And look, I love kettlebells, I love barbells, I love the theory behind strength training. And there are a lot of really, really great podcasts that can help you learn a little bit more about those areas of the fitness industry. But I want to focus on the things that most of my clients say to me, whether it's their first contact with me and we're having a chat over the phone, or it's what we hear on a daily basis as people's lives kind of interweave with their fitness. And this is the real, I think, key thing about today's subject, which is about sustainability. Whether we're running a 6-week challenge or 12-week program, or we're looking long-term for people's goals, there's one word that comes up over and over again, and that's sustainability. And we're not talking about sustainability of the environment, whether or not we're recycling our cardboard. We're talking about whether or not these habits and behaviors that we're working really hard to build are going to be something that that individual can continue for long-term, with our support or even without our support. Now, I've had clients who've worked with us for many, many years. I'm very grateful for working with those people because they've helped develop my business and I've learned a lot from them. And what we do know is the kind of behaviors and habits that those individuals have that have led them to create a sustainable relationship with their fitness. And we've been part of that journey, but we don't have to be part of someone's journey for it to be sustainable. It just so happens I've got some great case studies. Sustainability. And let's define that. What is sustainability? Or what is the fear of something not being sustainable? So the fitness industry is really guilty. It's really guilty for making very absolute statements, putting in front of people challenges or modalities and programs that are exciting, but at the same time have a level of extremity that makes the individual think, oh my God, if that's how you get fit, you have to do that. You have to fast for 12 hours a day. You can only eat these foods at this time with these supplements. And I've got to do that much exercise for that long at this intensity with only this equipment, which I have no access to. And we're starting, as much as we're trying to put in front of people solutions, we're actually putting in front of people boundaries and barriers more than anything. And what happens is that someone says, well, look, there's no way I can go to the gym 5 times a week. I just don't have the time. I'm a single parent, or my career requires me to travel internationally. I cannot be in a gym with the same equipment. And what, you're telling me I can only use barbells? Well, my hotel gym is lucky if it has a treadmill or 1 or 2 dumbbells. So what happens is that people go, you know what, this sounds like it's going to be really complicated. So rather than try and solve a problem that, to be fair, is important, but I have no skills to do so, I'm just going to put it to one side until it becomes really, really important. I can't ignore it. And for most people, they operate in this kind of limbo period where things are not great, but they're not so awful that they're in the front line of the NHS waiting list ready to be operated on, you know? Because your health will sustain you for a long period of time, and we are willing to put up with lots of hardship. I mean, humans throughout the ages can deal with a lot of hardship. I think about our ancestors. I mean, even the luxuries we take for granted, like a toilet inside, central heating, you know, a couple of generations ago, those were not widespread. So people could deal with moderate hardship to even more extreme hardship quite easily. And so being unfit, being unhealthy, having, you know, significant weight that you're carrying, being pre-diabetic, having lots of joint injuries, people go, you know what, that's just acceptable because they haven't been shown another way. I think it's much more, look, if I'm being honest, it's much more sustainable to be fit than it is to be unfit. I've been unfit. I've been very overweight. I've been unhappy with various aspects of my well-being, the way I perceive myself. That is not sustainable. I can endure it, what I could for a while, but it wasn't sustainable. And enduring something and sustainability are 2 different things. So what is typically unsustainable is that someone goes onto a program, they go onto a plan, that plan requires them to have very heavy focus on very strict parameters like this calorie target, these macros, protein, fat, carbohydrate, this much this, that much movement, for this long, at these times. And what most programs do is they layer levels of complexity. And those levels of complexity start stacking stress for most people. And there is a really simple perspective on this that maybe might give you insight into, give you something to relate to. If you're starting your job, now I don't know what you do for a profession, there's lots of people watching this, but let's say I come in fresh out of university or fresh out of school, college or whatever, and I go and do your job on day 1. Do you think I'm going to be overwhelmed? Particularly if I go in and do exactly what you're doing. Now imagine I'm at university studying to do medicine. Day 1, I've got to be a surgeon. I'm going to be highly stressed, I'm going to be overwhelmed, and I'm going to probably have a minor breakdown, okay? So the way I like to think about fitness, behaviors, habits, in terms of that analogy is that when someone comes to me, they're like that new graduate. They're like that person who's just left school, it's their first job, and they are overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. And therefore, everything requires processing. Their mind is just working and working and working. And that's tiring, okay? So if I went into a job, day 1, I'm having to think about every relationship every person I talk to, building those relationships. I've then got to understand the systems. I've got to understand how to work within the company and the standard operating procedures, all those things. So it's a very high decision fatigue, a lot of mental processing, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. So when someone comes into the gym, if I start layering too many things, and it's easy to do, it's really easy to do. Someone walks in and they go, oh my God, I've got to acquire all this knowledge, what, now? Right, today, day 1? This isn't sustainable. I don't know how to do this. What you're telling me, I have to train 5 days a week, I have to have progressive overload, I need to hit these 3 compound lifts along with these accessory muscle groups. We've got to work on mobility and flexibility. Have we done our cardio? What about steady state? Are we doing any sprints? Have you taken these supplements? Well, you haven't taken that supplement. What about this one, this one, this one? This one's non-negotiable. This should be taken every other week. Before you know it, that person's going, so what? I've got all this. They've got a notebook that's about 50 pages deep of just notes on whatever they need to do. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. because then we've got to do it for time. We've got to do, well, we're doing this 6-week program. Then once we do the 6-week program, we have to rewrite that. And then you do another 8-week program, which will go back to this, before you know it, you've made someone's life. I'm even getting confused just talking about it, okay? So what happens is that someone starts getting thrown these things, and then they've got external sources. They might have Men's Health, Women's Health, the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Mail, the radio, BBC, their friend next door, the work colleague, things that they found on the internet, things that ChatGPT or one of the AI systems has told them. And they've got all these inputs flying in. And they're saying, so I've got to make heads or tails of this. I've got to put this into something that's workable. I've then got to do it. I've then got to track it. What? That is not sustainable, is it? So the question that I always have is like, what do you want? Okay, so where are we going? What is the goal? Right, this is where we're going. Is that important enough to put some effort in? Yes, okay. How much time do you have? Okay, I have this much time each week. Okay, great. And what do you think we need to have achieved in the next 3-4 weeks that's going to make this journey feel worthwhile? The way to making something feel sustainable is start breaking it down into manageable chunks. Most people, and I've said this on the podcast in previous episodes, so maybe not on this video version, but certainly on the ones on iTunes and Spotify, big follower of the work of Dan Sullivan, and I love his books, they're great. Talks about the gap and the gain. Okay, most people live in the gap, which is the gap between where they want to be and where they are, and where they currently are. So one of the things about people's goals is they can feel like they're a horizon constantly moving away. And if you keep looking ahead, you're going to see how far away you are from where you want to be. And most people's goals just keep moving ahead. Your goals keep changing. So one of the ideas is that you turn 180 and you see how far you've come. I think it's really, really important that once we've set the goal, we start understanding pacing. One of the reasons I do a 30-day trial with my business is because over 30 days, we're not going to solve loads of problems. We're going to start that process, but we're going to start setting a pace. Because if someone tells me, well, how long is it going to take me to lose 10 kilos? I say, well, it took that person 3 months, that person 1 year, that person 2 months. Well, what's it going to take you to lose 10 kilos? Well, let's set a pace. And I set a pace by creating a minimum structure. When it comes to sustainability, it is about the development of skills. That is the sole, I think, focus for anyone who wants to make a sustainable fitness lifestyle. Have I developed enough skill to allow me to sustain this at a low level of friction? So, is it sustainable to be a high-level lawyer? Well, no, if you're a junior lawyer just come out of university. But if you've got 25 years experience working on high-level cases, working with complex people and challenging people, and having done it 5 days a week for 25 years at the senior level, and you've built years of experience and skill sets and encountered so many scenarios that you've become almost unflappable, then of course it is sustainable. You go, I mean, when I think like, how does Elon Musk run the boring company Tesla, X, Grok, SpaceX, and everything else he has, Neuralink? Well, I mean, like, I'm just running one business. Well, he's running loads of things. So is that sustainable? Well, he's given up certain things. There is no work-life balance for him. I mean, probably the first illusion to get rid of is there a work-life balance? No, there's just which priorities I mean, he's not the fittest person, is he? So he's obviously not focusing on his fitness. Could he? Well, he might have to give up something else, whether or not he thinks that's worthwhile. But if you think it's worthwhile to dedicate some time, then you've got to work out what that minimum is and increase your skills. And the only way you increase your skills is by working on things repeatedly. So work on a few basic skills. It became very apparent when I was running my business and running these classes that if we added too much variety, clients couldn't make as much progress because they didn't have enough experience to start consolidating their skills around lifting, and they couldn't push themselves as hard. So we started reducing the amount of exercises and reducing the complexity of them to the point now where clients are working on really 4 main lifts when it comes to the majority of the first like 25 to 30 minutes of a session. And now they're getting really good at those and they have a great sense of fulfillment around it. And it's very sustainable to get stronger and stronger and stronger at the deadlift the more you repeat it, because your skill set becomes higher, your confidence and your familiarity with the exercise is increased, and therefore you can push harder and harder and harder and attain more momentum with it and make more strength gains. So it's the same when it comes to your sustainable fitness lifestyle. Find what is manageable straight away and repeat long enough. That's why I ask people to train twice a week. Let's train twice a week, but not for just 1 week. Let's train twice a week for 6 months. If you can train twice a week for 3 months, maybe we can talk about adding the ad hoc third session. Then once you can do the ad hoc third session more frequently than not, let's make that something that you can do all the time. Once you've done that, after 6 months, you might suddenly start saying, well, actually, I'm now ready to start looking at my diet. Okay, let's start tracking. Yeah, but I want to start doing a thing. No, but let's start tracking. Can you track? Yeah, but I just want to do the diet. And I said, well, if you can't track, you're not going to be able to do diet. Because I don't know anyone who's succeeded on a diet who can't track. I mean, honestly, unless you can track your food, most 95% of people will fail on their diet because they are not keeping their attention on the problem. So we're starting to break things down into really sustainable skills by not trying to develop too many skills. We're not trying to learn jazz, classical, blues, funk, and Spanish flamenco guitar. We're trying to just focus on doing a couple of skills really well. And I find that once you start doing that, you don't need some of the other ones. All the other ones just come naturally. So I think the key to sustainability is quite simple. Can you develop a high level of skill in the areas that are going to move the needle the most? And if you don't know what those are, you need to spend some time thinking about what those might be. Seek advice from people. Whether you work with someone like myself or another personal trainer for however long, they will set you up as quickly as possible. What makes something sustainable is often getting a bit of momentum, but also creating leverage. Skills are leverage. They move bigger objects. I'm a lever. My team is a lever. We can move we can make progress on a bigger problem because we have a bigger lever. And that lever is our skill set and our familiarity in this world. I don't go to a plumber for my medical needs. I don't go to a physiotherapist for my legal advice. I go to the people who are going to make the biggest difference in the shortest amount of time. And I'll be honest, and you perhaps know this intrinsically, do you value your time or your money? Because if you value your time, you're willing to invest your money in solving the problem in a shorter period of time. But you may be able to solve that problem yourself. And I get a few comments occasionally on these videos saying, you just solve it yourself. Don't know why you need any help. Well, those people probably aren't successful. They may be. There may be that person out there who's never needed any help and has managed to develop all the skills themselves. No one's ever taught them. They just so happen to arrive ready-made and ready to influence the world. But that is not most people. Don't be scared to ask for help, because there's a lot of people who want to help you. Sometimes you have to pay them, okay? And the more you pay, the better the experience you probably have. The more you pay, the better the expertise you're going to have. You know, if you get a dirt cheap plumber, they may just be really good and like to do it for charity, but I suspect they're probably just a bit of a bobber job, and they're just going to end up, well, you know, I've had plenty of trouble with roofers, plumbers, and they're hard people to find. And I think that's also what puts people off, is that the skill sets of the people they're working with are so variable and the information is so variable. I mean, what makes that personal trainer good and what makes that personal trainer bad? What makes that plumber good? I mean, how many people have got a roofer in and then you realize they've done an awful job, despite other people saying it was great? I've had that experience. So you've got to do a little bit of research. And there's a lot of people who are willing to kind of, there's nothing to lose, right, from just experimenting playing. I mean, that's why I say, like, if someone does my 30-day program, like, at the end of it, if you don't want to work with us, you've only committed 30 days, but I'm pretty certain I'm damn good. And the worst that can happen is you get a bit fitter, but you just didn't get on with us. You didn't like the way we do things. You didn't like the environment or whatever. But you're going to get stronger. I mean, I don't know how not lifting safely and not being consistent is not going to make a difference. So the worst that can happen is you get a bit stronger, but you didn't enjoy the process. And therefore, find another process. That's what's going to make it sustainable. Having community around you really does make it sustainable. I see so many people, they turn up and they're tired and they're waking up, and then they just see someone they know really well and they turn up to the class, and then it's boom, everything gets better. Their energy improves, and by the end of the session, they're really mucking in and enjoying it. That in a nutshell is my view on sustainability. There is no magic one solution, but I think overarching it is to skill yourself up in the behaviors that move the needle. Get so skillful in them that they're almost impossible to fail at. And you can talk to someone like myself or a personal trainer or an expert in the field you're looking to make sustainable to say, what is the thing that I need to spend my time on? And when we run our emergence program, which is our 12-week fast track program, we basically tell everyone what they need to do for those 12 weeks to get them ready for the photo shoot. So just focus on these areas, but the people I'm working with on that program have gone through some of the other programs for enough time so that this doesn't overwhelm them. I'm not just taking people off the street saying, okay, straight into this high intensity program, because they don't have the skills. But even those people on 12-week program are still saying, I want to make this sustainable. And sometimes you have to turn the volume up to realize, oh, that's really loud. Well, maybe 10 out of 10 is really loud. My ears are bleeding. But actually, if I put it on 6, it's not as loud as I thought. So at the end of the program, they realized that 15,000 steps a day was really challenging, but now 10,000 steps is just easy. They can make that non-negotiably. So thanks so much for listening. Please do share this, that we are growing. The podcast is growing, and it's getting some good traction. And, sometimes I'll review the analytics and I'll see, particularly on like the podcast version, the audio version of this, really starting to see that grow. So do share it with people. There are so many different subjects I've covered. And if you have any questions or ideas of what I could discuss, I would love to have some feedback or some suggestions, because sometimes I'll sit there and I go, well, what are people going to be interested in? So it's very useful for me. Like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next week.